In the famous words of Timothy Galway, performance is equal to potential minus interference. This means if we truly want to become a high performer, we have two choices. We can work on building our potential, or we can work on removing the interference and distractions that are holding us back. In today's episode of The Leadership Project, we are joined by Master Certified Coach Tony Latimer. We explore the world and benefits of non-directive coaching in helping us to remove interference and elevate our performance. We also dig deeper into the role that simplicity plays in developing mastery. Stay tuned to the end as Tony and I discuss the future of AI in the world of coaching. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Leadership Project podcast. I'm greatly honoured today to be joined by Tony Latimer. Tony has been coaching for more than 30 years, so he has a deep understanding and a deeper appreciation of the world of coaching, and he is a master certified coach. And to put that into perspective for you, of all of the coaches in the world, about 3% of coaches make it to that master certified coach. And we're going to unpack that a little bit today. The more interesting thing is that a recent development where Tony's been working on this for a while, but he's released a product called TonyLatimer.ai, and it is an artificial intelligence chat GPT engine that is designed to be like a coach in your pocket. But I'm going to let Tony describe it because I'll mess it up. But it's about using generative AI and the ability to put in questions and get logical and helpful responses back from an AI coach in your pocket that can help you with your leadership. I'll leave it for that for now because I'm sure Tony's going to tell us more about that when we get to that. But I want to go into the background first. So Tony, I really want to go back into your history a little bit and what led you into this big wide world of coaching in the first place.
It was 1984. So I was an IT guy. When I first started working, I stumbled into the accounts office. Unfortunately, within 6 months, I discovered that wasn't for me, and we found the computer department. So that got me going. I went through the roles: mainframes, operations, engineering, programming, systems analysis, business analysis, and at about the time when software packages were becoming a real thing, with the emergence of the early mini computers, I was working for a software company who was an IBM business partner. And I was getting ready for my sort of first managing people role and messing it up. IBM were great. They used to share. So I was selected and told, yep, you're going on this leadership program. And that, because coaching didn't exist at that time, really, in the sense that we talk about it today. In those days, the coach was the business. It was the sports person. And typically it was what I would refer to as directive coaching. So the coach was the expert who told the player what to do, what to change. But in the late 70s, Tim Galway, the tennis coach in the States, discovered non-directive coaching. That getting people to go and reflect on what they were doing made it easier to find the change. So as an IT guy, I go on a leadership program sponsored by IBM. We go to a country house in Surrey, and much to my surprise, we're not talking about leadership. We're actually learning how to coach people on the tennis court. I couldn't play tennis. I couldn't tell you the rules even. So I guess automatically for me, doing it the wrong way, telling people what to do was not a possibility. So all I could do was embrace the technique they were teaching us, and it worked. It was absolutely amazing. When we got to the end of the week, you do a little test where you try out with somebody. And I just coached somebody in 30 minutes to the most amazing improvement on a specific part of the game. And I was just blown away. I went up to the instructors and went, guys, I get it. This is amazing. It works. Just one question. How does it help me manage people in the office? And they kind of shrugged and went, don't know, we're sports people, really. But the group that was teaching, so Tim Galway was the originator. His organization Inner Game had just come into the UK, and there were sports people like Alan Fine, tennis professional, who was teaching me. He then taught Miles Downey, another tennis professional, who later went on to set up the coaching school at the Industrial Society. Who else? John Whitmore, racing driver, became kind of famous in the coaching world. And then Graham Alexander, who was the IBM guy, I think, who was pushing for this at the time, he's now got a huge executive coaching practice. So I got excited. They couldn't tell me what was happening because they were just working on it. And in parallel, they all sat down and started working out what they thought coaching was for in the organization. And things like their grow model and stuff like that emerged. I went back to work as the techie and just went, I'm going to figure this out. So I started working on how you could use non-directive coaching in the workplace.
Oh, that's brilliant, Tony. Now, there's so many things I'm hearing there, but the three key things I'm hearing is that you started in IT, and to come to our full circle moment later when we get into .ai, it's not surprising to hear that at all. Then this journey that you're going on where you're at the start of it all, the start of transformative coaching and the concept of a heightening mindset instead of a bridging mindset. So you didn't know how to play tennis yourself, and yet you were able to use a heightening mindset to unlock some kind of blocking factor or technique issue with someone that was trying to play tennis. And then there's the power of reflection, that it's through reflection that we truly unlock, learn, and elevate. How does that kind of sit with you? Tell us more about your view of this heightening mindset and what happens when in transformative coaching when that is unlocked.
I like to keep things simple. One of the issues I saw over the years was that most of my clients, so I continued working in IT, but I was playing with these ideas in the background. And then about 23, 24 years ago, got to that point where I need to be doing my own thing. And by that time, I'd got a body of IP developed around leadership and using coaching skills and so on. So one of the things I noticed was that soft skills, and I don't even like that term. I don't think there are any soft skills. They're all hard skills, right? Everybody in the sort of HR people development space would tend to use very fluid, flowery, dare I say, tree-hugging kind of language about stuff. And I noticed that in the IT world, we're technical and we don't sit comfortably with that sort of thing. You talk soft skills and the technical guys just kind of run a mile. The thing that's really worked for me was tapping onto my abilities that maybe want to work in IT, which was like a very high capability for logical analysis. And one of the other things I've learned over the years is, and I thought it was just me, but I heard in an old recording recently that Douglas Adams had the same thing, which is it's difficult to learn unless you totally understand. And how that shows up for me is you can tell me, anybody can tell me something, and it doesn't matter who you are. My brain cannot accept that what you're telling me is true. I have to unpack it, understand it, and either prove it to myself it's right, in which case you've now got a dedicated follower, or I'll change it and improve it. So this whole soft skills thing made me just want to instinctively rebel. I was, and the bit that got me excited. So if you go back to the foundations of Galway's stuff, his formula for performance was performance equals potential minus interference. And the way that played out was if you take a tennis player and say, are you any good? They'll go, yeah, modestly, not too bad. But if you ask a different question and say, have you ever hit that one perfect shot? The one that golfers talk about in the bar for years afterwards, right? And most people will go there, yeah, but just once. So, okay. So then the real question is not questioning your ability or your potential. If you've hit that shot once, your system knows how to do it. So we can't question your potential. We have to go and find the interference that's getting in the way. And that formula stuck with me. So the foundation of what I did was about, okay, let's get scientific about this. Let's stick to the maths. Because the nice thing about a formula like that is if you can remove or change the interference, the variable in the equation, you guarantee that the result will change. So suddenly, when it comes to the stressful part for managers about how do we get people to improve, how do we change their performance, they're now getting, it's pretty cool. It's interesting. It change the formula. Yeah. So where it goes wrong is people look at somebody's performance and they start to question the potential. Are they the right person for the job? So we're having these repeated conversations about, please change your performance, please change your performance. And then we question the potential. So if you pin the equation to a specific job or part of a job, it becomes purely mathematical. Result, constant, variable.
Yeah, I love it.
So an easy, right? And when you talk to sort of technical, whether they're designers, bankers, IT people, doesn't matter. They're all technical in their roles. They all worry about this soft skill stuff. But when you just give them a formula like that and go, let me explain. Yeah, stop doing this, go over there. And they go like, oh, wow. Oh, okay, I could do that. Yes, I hear what you're saying about transformative. I would probably call it just really big changes.
Yeah.
I really I like the Animal Farm of language. 4 syllables bad, 2 syllables good. Everything. And when we communicate in organizations around the world, typically you're doing it in English, which is nobody's first language. And if you go past people's vocabulary, that's when you trip up. If you can keep everything short and simple, then everybody goes, yeah. So in fact, an example, I've been in workshops where I've talked about this with leaders, and when you say vocabulary in Japan, everybody gets the electronic dictionary out and tries to translate that. Okay, so don't say vocabulary, just say words that you know. And everywhere around the world will go, oh, got it. I know what you're talking about.
I like the simplicity of that coming.
Sorry, I'm not sure if I answered the question.
You did indeed, and I'm going to replay back to you some of the things that I took away from that, and we're going to start with the last bit, which is we're going to come to this later. The simplicity. I love the simplicity of what you're doing there with language. So the things I'm taking away there, Tony, I'm thinking about this performance equals potential minus interference. That's really resonating with me from a coaching point of view. And I'm going to keep the tennis analogy going for a moment. And controversially, because a lot of people don't like the guy, I'm going to say that Nick Kyrgios is probably the tennis player in history that had the most potential, the most natural ability, and yet his life is full. I was going to say was full. Is full of interference, of distractions, of limiting beliefs, of all kinds of things. Novak Djokovic at the other end, I'm going to say, had all of that potential, probably close to Kyrgios, but was able to remove all of that interference. And the difference between a champion and someone that's, let's say, a top 10, top 20 player is the big moments where they're able to remove that interference, that limiting belief, and win that point. How does that sit with you?
Completely agree with that. It's the difference. I mean, I'm not big on tennis at all, even to this day. For me, it's Formula One. And again, we see the same things. We see a handful of awesome drivers, but there's the awesome driver who keeps making mistakes. And then there's the awesome driver who consistently does not make mistakes. He doesn't let things phase him. Yeah, we're seeing it in the current period. We saw it a few years ago with Hamilton. They just don't make mistakes. They're very few and far between, and that's about not getting the distraction. So I had a little. I'll give you an example. Can't do tennis. Go golf. Early days of starting my coaching practice, you're sort of running around doing whatever goes. Somebody I knew came to me and asked me if I could coach a golfer. And it was somebody who was on, he'd come out of Japan, he got a sponsor, they'd sent him to Singapore, he's on the tour. And he was a natural. I mean, this guy was described as a beautiful natural. Came to Singapore, and after 6 months on the tour here, he couldn't make the cut anywhere. And I literally went, okay, I'll take him away. And he was having anger issues and all sorts of stuff. So I went with him. We actually went up from Singapore. We went up north in Malaysia to Ipoh to a tournament. I said, okay, I'll be with you for 3 days there. And before the tournament started, I went, okay, first thing I want you to do is just go out and walk the course and then come back, and then we'll talk about it. And he came back and he just said, I don't like the 9th hole. It's interesting. That's, it's just a hole. But as we unpacked it a little bit, he now knew where his game was going to go wrong, and he went out for his practice rounds, and that was exactly where it went wrong on the 9th hole, because the interference was, golfers are supposed to be able to sort of play down either side of the fairway, right, to head towards the green. And in this particular one, I think there was a water hazard on the right, but then there were some trees on the left. And although they can play both sides, they tend to have a preference. And because of the layout of the obstacles, he felt that hole was forcing him to play to his weak side. I don't think the hole was forcing him to do anything, right? But this was how his brain translated it. And this was the kind of the interference that was kicking in. It's absolutely fascinating.
It really plays to this thought about the power of the story that we tell ourselves in the head. We tell ourselves about ourselves, tell ourselves about others. It's really powerful. I'm going to try and take this, Tony, into leadership parlance for a moment and think about how the audience, if you're listening to this and you're hearing us talk about tennis, Formula One, golf, the concept translating it to coaching in the workplace and leadership in the workplace. The one I'm thinking about, and this is very personal, me openly sharing where I know my biggest limiting belief in my leadership journey has been the ability to give feedback. I always had a limiting belief, a more than a limiting belief, a fear of giving feedback or not wanting to hurt the person, not all kinds of reasons. And until I addressed that limitation, I was never going to be able to give feedback. So this whole thing of the performance equals potential minus interference, for me the interference was the mental block before I even opened my mouth to give the feedback. It wasn't I can speak English, I can give feedback. I had the potential to give feedback.
Yes.
The interference was the mental block before I'd give the feedback.
That's fascinating. Do you want to just dig deep on that one for a minute? Because that's a really cool one. The piece of work, and it took several years to do for me, was saying, take that performance equation and then how do we use it in the workplace context? And the key was saying, what exactly does potential mean? So I don't use potential in the sense of, could you rise higher? We say, what is required for this role? So the potential is what's the attitude, and values that's needed for the role. So then we can see, has the person got it? We can match them up. if it's not working or if there's change required, different result, you must go to the interference. And after a lot of years of figuring it out, I realized that interference comes from three areas. There's skill, which is basically inside you. There's environment, which is anything outside you. And there's aspiration. Now, you don't ever, when you're trying to change performance, you don't ever touch aspirations, right? Because you'll always get a false positive. What you do is just simply open the door to say, what's going on? Is there a difficulty in skill or in environment? And skill is made up of two things. So when I use the word skill, I'm saying that you actually do something. You can do it and it works. But skill is a combination of knowledge and confidence to apply the knowledge. And the one you just mentioned is very, very common. People know they need to give somebody feedback if they're not delivering, right? But they don't. And the reason they don't is because they lack confidence. Exactly the way you expressed it. We're basically afraid of the emotional response we might get. Now, the fun bit is that overcoming confidence usually comes from giving them deeper knowledge. So as the manager, think back over the last month. What are the things that your people, your team have really ticked you off on when they haven't done something and you're going, in your head, you're going, oh, come on, it's obvious. And they go, oh yeah, I've got a few of those. Right. So you need to unpack those and document them. Because when you ask yourself the question, when you were 12, was it obvious? You're like, well, no, of course not. Okay. So all that means is it's something that you've learned since you were 12. So instead of getting frustrated and thinking your people are stupid and useless because they're not seeing the obvious, you have to realize that all this means is they have not yet learned it. And because to you it's obvious, it's knowledge that you've just absorbed into your system and your way of being so naturally that it would never occur to you that you need to teach it to anybody. Because it's obvious, isn't it? So when you unpack the it's obvious, you've then got deeper nuggets of learning that you can then teach people. And so go back to that example. You've got the manager who's afraid to give feedback because they're afraid of the emotional reaction they might get, which could be a whole bunch of things. It could be they get angry, they jump over the desk and hit me. It could be they quit. It could be they cry. It could be they don't quit, they stay. And then they stab me in the back when the 360 or the employee engagement survey comes around. You know, all sorts of stuff. With that fear, what if I could teach you a way to give feedback that will guarantee you will not get that emotional reaction? Would you maybe feel a little bit more confident to try that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the most people would. If that was the thing that was holding them back, they'd go, yeah, tell me more. Right?
And in fact, I literally just came out of a talent development workshop yesterday with one of my clients, and we'd just done that piece. We'd had that conversation about, let's go through the steps of how you give somebody feedback. And so let's play that conversation. How does that feel? Does that feel like I'm actually giving you negative feedback? And they went, no, not at all. That just felt helpful. Okay, so that's now their exercise this week is, having analyzed their teams, for next Tuesday for me, they've got to prepare the script of the conversation of how am I going to say that to my people that way. And there wasn't one of them in the room who's got any hesitation about the fact that they're going to have to go and do that. Because we've got rid of the interference by giving them deeper knowledge, which fixes the confidence problem So now they're happy to go do it, and it'll become a skill.
I like it a lot. And once you've got that skill, you will walk in with confidence. And then once you do it a few times, you'll also then build competence, and you'll get in that confidence cycle, and it just gets better and better. It's really good.
Oh, I'll go further than that. I'll say it's a one-time shift.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right. So this particular organization I'm working with, I developed their new talent development program last year, and we're doing it again this year. 5 people out of the 9 who were on the program last year had varying degrees of performance issues with some of their team members, and every one of them had like one person where they're going like, this is World War III. This has got to end. And we took them through here's how you deliver the feedback. Here's how you have this conversation. They went and did it. And then when we did our next group coaching session, every one of them came in and sort of went, it just worked. So it wasn't a practice this. When it's that bad, you've only got to do this one time and watch it work, and you just go, OMG. Yeah. So it really is a massive, can I use your word, transformative shift for people in how they lead.
So let me share with you now. This is really interesting hearing how you're doing it with others. I'll share with you how I managed to make the breakthrough. And the first one was very similar, was I learned the skill, and the skill was SBI. So I switched to SBI. I've used a few other frameworks as well, but SBI, so situation, behavior, impact, and I add action. So situation, behavior, impact, action. It helps me feel like I've got a framework that I can rely on, that it delivers the feedback effectively. I know it works. I have the confidence that it works. And then the second part was empathy. And I put myself in the shoes of the person receiving the feedback and convinced myself that if I was the one receiving, I'd be mortified if I was doing something wrong and someone didn't tell me and give me the chance to fix it. So I reframed it from, oh no, I've got to give feedback, to giving feedback is a gift, and SBIA is my framework in which I'm going to deliver that gift.
Absolutely. I think you and I probably are doing it in a very, very similar way. The way I express what you've expressed is getting people to realize that for anybody on your team, if they've got the job, you cannot question their potential. You have to convey to people. So the belief this is based on is, barring physical limitations, anybody can do anything they want to. You've just got to learn some stuff and put it into practice. And the difference between saying to somebody, I believe in you, as opposed to saying, I know you can do this. There's just a little difference in the energy and the intention that comes through that one. So I get them to get in that place right up front when you sit down with your people. Because if you honestly did not believe and do not believe that the person in front of you is capable of learning how to do that job, then I'm sorry, don't waste your time having this conversation. Yeah. They shouldn't be there. Yeah, because if you actually genuinely believe that, then even though you're wrong, probably, you can't actually do anything to help them to change, because you're sitting there going like, no, this is the belief I hold about you, and our behaviors drive our beliefs, right? So you could just get them to completely shift that mindset. Go, no, you got to, when you walk in, just go to people, I know you can do this. A little something shifts in people's heads.
I love it, Tony. So what I want to transition now to, and I think we've built on this as we've gone along, the simplicity of mastery. And for those that are watching the video, it's written right behind Tony's head. Unpack that for us, because it seems like two incongruent words, but I don't believe they are. So
no, I don't think so either. So I've always liked some of the stuff that Einstein said. And when I was younger, I didn't really understand it all, but I got fascinated by it. So I sort of dug in. And I may get the exact quote wrong, but he said something to the effect of, everything should be simplified as much as possible and no more. And what I found over the years when I was developing some of my theories was that, as he'd said, if you simplify something to it, if you take something down to its simplest components, you get a universal truth, something that will work almost anywhere. So what I found, and when I look at the frameworks that all of my leadership stuff and coaching stuff is based on, every concept has three. There's always three elements. It just seems like if you analyze it correctly, you'll get three, which is useful because three things is, even the male brain is capable of holding three things in its conscious awareness at one time. So people, and you can represent it graphically, people can remember them, they can recall it very easily. So that's the core beliefs about simplicity. A mega breakthrough for me, that was all in the leadership stuff. Back in 2007, I'd got a lot of coaching hours logged. I'd done my PCC credentials, and I had the hours. So the minute they gave me the certificate, I went, great, I'm going to apply for my MCC. I hadn't done it earlier than that because I was just busy trying to build a business. In those days, there was no training for that level. When I got my MCC, I was number 103 globally. Now there's a few thousand, or 3,000 or 4,000, but then I was 103. So who are you going to learn from? And you literally had to either physically or over the phone travel the world and sit at the feet of the masters, watching them pour tea into overflowing cups, right? And go like, what does that mean? And this is when we came back to this complexity of language. I'd hear these master coaches going, yes, you must listen to what is not being said. And I go like, okay, which ear would that come in then? I don't get it. And I could see why trying to teach any of these skills to sort of technical engineering-minded leaders in business was like, it's not going to work. I got it, and I was very lucky because, like, in those days, the pass rate for the exam was about 6% for first-time pass. It's a bit better now, but not much. I got through and I got it. But the biggest realization was, hang on a minute, I passed. That means I can do this. No, that sounds a little absurd, but it was mind-opening for me. I can do it. And if you can do something, and you have the ability to logically analyze what you do correctly, you can codify it. And if you can codify it, you can teach it. So I then set about saying, okay, let's just simplify and break down what exactly did I do? How do I coach? So when you've broken that down, suddenly you can teach it. And literally, share another perspective. I was asked to join an ICF Global Task Force a few years ago that was looking at coach training and education. And we revised everything, a number of things. We came up with the latest level 1, 2, 3 stuff that we have in coach training, even though there was no level 3 stuff available. And as I looked at that, I went, you know what, there's a gap. And that was the point a couple of years ago when I first, for the first time ever, decided to start sharing what I do as a coach with professional coaches. So for 23 years, I just taught corporate people, internal coaches, HR to use coaching skills. The interesting bit was what I realized, that what I'm teaching that is MCC level mastery is exactly the same stuff that I've been teaching these corporate managers who were beginners. And that's why at the end of a 3 or 4 day program, they were perfectly capable of sitting down and doing, your first application of coaching as a manager is stop being the expert problem solver and get people to think things through. Yeah. And that was what we worked on. And they were all capable of doing that by the end of the week. The level of coaching that we're talking about needs thousands of hours of practice and so on. So you can teach mastery to beginners if you've simplified it. And that was where the phrase came from. It's just like, this is what this is about. We are teaching. And I suddenly realized it applied to the coaching skills. It applies to the leadership skills. If you've analyzed it, you've broken it down, you've got it in its simple components. You can teach it, people absorb it, they use it, it works.
Love it. Yeah, thanks, Tony. Thank you for sharing that. I want to now segue to TonyLatimer.ai. So I think we need to challenge a little bit first, or explore a little bit first is a better word, the world of AI. A lot of people can see it coming. They can see it changing at a ever-increasing pace. And there are some people that are thinking that it might replace them. Like, there's a lot of fear out there as well as a lot of excitement. It's kind of either end of the spectrum and then a bunch in the middle. Where do you think the world of AI is going?
If we look in the sort of coaching space, the AI kind of burst into the public awareness with the launch of ChatGPT. Everybody gets excited about what it can do in all sorts of areas. We all know that AI had been in use prior to that, but the generative chat-based one was the one that just woke everybody up. I think one of the mistakes that's been made is people in lots of fields, coaching particularly, are jumping on ChatGPT style interactions and saying, this is going to become coaching. And there are people out there who've got really more graunchy little coaching bots, which are getting better. They're never going to really crack it because there's a fundamental problem that the design of the AI tool called a GPT is that it has a knowledge base from which it can answer questions. And that's mentoring, not coaching. Right? So it needs, I think they need to create a GPT that is the opposite way around. That's because the problem everybody who's trying to design coaching bots is having is that getting it to stick to coaching as opposed to giving advice and so on is a real challenge. And that's one of its limitations. I believe if you could create a GPT that went the other way around so that it can ask questions rather than be geared to answering. Because whilst we know it's occasionally permissible for a coach to sort of share insights or something, as long as you then keep triggering the thinking, you really need to start with the fundamentals of it's about getting the other person thinking. So it can't be about answering questions. Interestingly enough, over a few weeks ago, I was discussing this with a guy who's very big in this area in the UK, Jazz Razul. The point I made when he was saying, like, do we think any of these coaching bots will replace humans? It's a question of scale. It's a question of gradient. Because one of the ways, a second way that you could make the AI more useful is give it the senses. Because, in the history of coaching, who coaches over text? Right? That just doesn't help. How can you have a pause when you're replying to text? Basic level coaching, if you connected the AI to the senses, then we're starting to get somewhere. And then lo and behold, what was it, less than a week ago, we've got those demonstration videos out now where they've actually put ChatGPT connected into a human form robot that can do it. Have you seen that one? It's absolutely superb, right? So it's now gathering the information. So you've given it the sensors. If you have one of those, We're in, I think, even just using the answer-based chat GPT, I think we're in a slightly different place as far as coaching goes, because it can receive the signals, the facial expressions, the eye movements. With that, you have the possibility of teaching it how to know that you've made somebody think. Because at the basic level of coaching, we look for change. Is there a pause? Is there a muscle structure change? Is there a different skin coloration? Is there an eye movement? For some of the people, is there a cessation of eye movements, which means they're thinking? The focal distance change. So I think we've got definite potential. Put the AI into the sensor box, that it could start to be taught how to do that. So that may be a different way of overcoming the problems of the GPT being very geared towards answering the questions rather than asking them. Because then if it can sense thinking or no thinking from some of these physical signals, it can be told, okay, if you don't see these signals, you need to ask better questions. If you do see the signals, shut up and let them carry on thinking. So that's another possibility that could help, I think. Where it gets really interesting is people are asking the question of potentially could these coaching bots replace human coaches? The answer is yes, at a level. So if you look at what they've done down at, what Nikki's done down at Stellenbosch University, they've got their tool, Coach Vici. They've narrowed it down to a very specific use case. An engaged user who agrees to stick with that can usefully get coached on achieving a couple of specific goals, workplace goals. If you accept some of the stuff that Rebecca's doing out of Germany, where they've coded one that works very strictly to a solution-focused model. So if you're happy to be coached in that model and you don't want to think outside it, then that could work. Opening it up to make it work more widely and more generally, I think needs the sensor box. And I think that could work, and it does. It could work quite nicely. The really interesting bit, though, is like what kind of coach cannot be replaced? And that is when you move to the energetic level. So the way I describe it, think of coaching as operating at two levels, Newtonian physics or quantum physics. Typical ACC, PCC coach training. You learn a coaching model, you use a coaching model, you can get through the credentials at that level. In order to get to MCC, you've got to let go of that. You won't pass if you're detected as using pre-prepared questions, structures, and models. So you've got to coach without models. So the way I teach people to do that at the basic level is to get over the bar of mastery. However, that's like martial arts. That's like getting your black belt. I have daughters, so at a ridiculously old age, in my mid-40s, with the young girls, it seemed like a really good idea to get them to do karate. And the only way they would was if I did it as well. So as the creaky old guy in the room, I have to try and learn this. And in fairness, I got to the brown black, the one step before black belt. During the grading, bust my shoulder, and that was it. You're never going to make black belt, mate. Tough luck. But it was a lot of fun. And the interesting thing was when you're just about to do your black belts, they suddenly turn around and say, you now qualified to come to the black belt class. And you go like, what's that? Didn't know it existed. They say, yeah, colored belts, that's just about learning the basics. Getting a black belt does not mean you are a master. That's the first step on the road to mastery. And then you've got your 8 downs of how far you go. And coaching is like that. Once you learn to let go of it all and coach without models, you can get over the bar of mastery, but you're still using the 5 senses. You're still doing Newtonian physics. It's what I see, it's what I hear, it's what I say. The degree to which you have mastery depends on your ability to use energy. And by that, I'm talking about again, back to Einstein, everything in the universe is matter. All matter is made up of energy, cannot be created or destroyed. I'm energy, your energy in a different form. The space between us is just energy in another form. It's physical. Your thoughts are physical. They are electrochemical signals on neural pathways in your brain. So by definition, if we could vibrate those, it's going to help them change and move. It's like oiling the cogs. People have physical manifestations of the emotional content of the neural pathways they're accessing. I think of something embarrassing, my skin coloration changes, I blush. I think of something sad, I cry. As a coach, you have to learn that they're not upset, they're just having a physical manifestation of the emotional content of a neural pathway. And if you can help them shift to another neural pathway, that will stop. But the interesting thing is, people also have a physical manifestation at an energetic level when they access a neural pathway. So there is an additional level of signals being sent out at the energetic level that if you can learn to pick up on them, you get a much better read on like what's going on. So mastery beyond the black belt is about learning to, at 3 levels I find it works at. First, learning to read the energy, to pick up the signals. Second, learning to connect with the energy. And then the third is moving the energy. Because when people get really stuck, their energy stops. It's blocked. This is really no different to what a TCM practitioner is doing. Physical ailments in the body, the energy flow is there. That's what we move. Once you realize that your thoughts are physical, and then coaching is about the process of making people think, well, we can play with that as well. So learning to actually flow the energy. And one of the things where we're teaching at the advanced level is how to learn to connect with people, but then flow the energy through them. Because when their energy starts flowing again, all the physical things get a little better. So the mental connections, the thought processes happen.
Really interesting, Tony. So I'm taking away 4 things here, 4 layers, I'm going to call it. So bear with me as I try to summarize this. The first layer is where we are today, that generative AI is getting better at giving answers, giving better answers. In fact, the fact that a job exists called a prompt engineer whose very job is to make a generative AI give better answers, that's where we're at, which is, as you mentioned, it's more mentoring. It's more the bridging mindset, teaching you something that you might not know, having that resource at your fingertips so that you can look something up. But it's not coaching and it's not a heightening mindset at this point. But it could be an augmentation to coaching. So if you are having coaching sessions and then your coach can't be next to you 24/7 and you're in the workplace and you're stuck, it could be a tool that helps you become unstuck, at least momentarily.
Yes, because sometimes you need ideas,
exactly.
right? And this is where the mentoring approach to it comes from. You can't coach somebody through a knowledge gap.
Exactly. All right. So this is our level 1. The level 2 that I like where you're going with this, and I think this is possible. I agree with you that if we flip the script from answer intelligence to question intelligence, and all of a sudden the AI coach is asking better questions, not giving better answers, but asking better questions, all of a sudden we're back to that reflective state that you and I discussed all the way back at the start of this interview, where when you get someone into that reflective state, this is where some true heightening mindset and growth can occur. So that's level 2. Layer 3 or level 3 that I'm hearing from you is then the multisensory. And you used an interesting quote before you were talking about when you first went into coaching and people started saying to you, you got to listen to what's not said, not what is said. this is where the multi-sensory comes in, the ability to notice a shift in someone, to go, like they might be talking about something from their past and a huge smile comes to their face, or that ability to see the whole of the person in a multi-sensory experience would be level 3. And the level 4, and I am not a master coach, you are, I was with you and I understood everything you were saying. I've not experienced what you're talking about when you talk about the energy level. So then picking up the shifts in energy that happen during the coaching conversation. So then now to come back to my original question of where is AI going, I'm feeling like it's a continuum of augmentation. A continuum of augmentation. So at the moment, it's nothing more than, let's say, a mentoring augmentation to a coaching experience. As it goes further, it might get more advanced with things like flipping the script from answer to question. Then it might get to sensory perception. Then it might get to energy perception. But I still feel like a human master coach like a Tony Latimer is going to be there for the whole journey. How does that sit with you?
With what we're seeing, the flip to level 2 and then level 3 is going to be technically possible fairly soon. Yeah, the guy standing there saying, explain to me what you did whilst you clear up the rubbish I've just tipped on the table.
That's
and
the one I watched.
Does it.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
That's it. That's the level 3. Yeah, I saw a smile, therefore I'm going to ask what happened, because I know that a smile means you've accessed a neural pathway, etc. So that's level 3. And if you look at those robots, if somebody chooses to put the money into designing a robot to coach, then we're not far away from that at all. I think we're about to have a huge breakthrough. Does that wipe out coaches? No, because that's going to be a pretty expensive robot, right? I mean, if you're trying to do a GPT tool just through chat, yeah, that's cheap. Anybody can deploy one of those. So you then got an economic barrier to the deployment of that kind of full sensory robot that can really coach properly at that level. I don't think we don't have the sensors in hardware available to detect the energetic level.
No, I would say that's correct. So I'm going to say, yep, I fully agree. So we're probably already at level 1. Level 2 is a matter of programming and smart prompt engineers with the right ability. Level 3, computer vision is going to go some way. But that's not cheap, as you said. So computer vision will pick up some of that, and machine learning would improve the computer vision over time. But the energy, no, I don't see it yet. But, the world changes quickly, right?
Well, first of all, energy detection, that level 1 of the 3 I talked about, would require a type of sensor we probably don't have yet. So somebody's got to invent some hardware that could do that. Level 2, level 3 of using the energy, we're in the realms of science fiction a few millennia from now before that could be happening, because when we're teaching people to do the energy work, they sort of, it's hard to grasp. And then they go like how do I do? And what I've discovered is that intention is the control panel for your energy. So when you ask somebody to just reach out and connect with a person energetically, they go like, how do I do that? What physically? I'm not using my muscles or anything. No, it's an intention. If you have the intention to move that energy, it starts to happen. So your chances of building the hardware that could have the intention to do that, aren't we kind of talking a real human at that point? I think for the foreseeable future, as long as coaches can learn to drop the level 1, level 2. So really, what we actually need is people to learn that level 3, that coaching without models. Get to that and you're okay. You're doing what the machines can't. Or next year, a machine will be able to do it, but guess what? It's going to cost $50 million just for one machine. So yeah, not going to happen.
Yeah.
But what I think missing is this additional deployment of what AI can actually do at the moment. The learning tool. Give people, the answers they need in the moment right now. So we can revolutionize how people learn by putting an AI at the front of a private database of guaranteed correct knowledge.
I still think that is the better question anyway, Tony. And bear with me for a second. We started off with a question somewhere along the way where we said, will AI replace coaching? And I prefer to ask the question, how should AI augment coaching? It should be complementary. And we shouldn't be thinking, how do we replace coaches? It should be, how can we give people tools that would take coaching to the next level?
So one of the interesting things on that, so for instance, with our tool, the coaches who I work with, they go like, yeah, this always happens. People come up and ask questions and they need to learn something, but I'm not the subject matter expert. So that's okay. You can now give them this tool and they can go and get the answers, and they get ideas. You focus on coaching them on how to put the ideas into play. That's a great one. The other area I'm just experimenting with is like in mental coaching, where we're helping coaches develop. So you take a recording of some coaching they've done. Now, I can see that we can start to use the GPT tools to say, okay, here's a very detailed description of every bit of evidence, everything we're looking for when we assess somebody against core competencies. So here's a recording of a piece of work they've done. Just zip through that for me.
Yeah,
and
that would work.
The GPT tool will give me an analysis of that coaching against the competencies in seconds, whereas a coach is going to sit down and spend a couple of hours doing it.
I'm going to say yes and on that one. So it's going to speed it up. What it will do is it'll be able to do the parsing. It'll be able to look at the language. Potentially you could train it to look for pauses and things like this, but it still won't pick up the shifts. So if the coach followed the handle questions and the core competencies like a robot, sorry, poor pun, right? Like if it was a robotic coaching session, like you were saying, like an ACC might do, right, for example, it'll be able to parse that, and it'll parse that in the speed that it can process it, right? It'll be done. But it wouldn't pick up, hey, coach, did you not notice the person really shifted, their energy or their attention, or they even slumped in their chair when you got to that? The AI won't pick that up yet.
So it makes the mental coach or the one who's teaching more effective. So it can do the grunt work for you.
You can focus on the mastery.
And you focus on the other stuff.
Love it. All right, Tony, this has been really interesting. What a great journey we've been on. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us today, and also the way that you think, the way that you process, which makes a lot of sense to me as an engineer too, by the way. It's been really great discussion and great pleasure having you on the show. I'd like to go now to our 4 questions that we ask all of our guests. So we call this our rapid round. What's the one thing you know now, Tony Latimer, that you wish you knew when you were 20?
I think it is this whole thing around the existence of energy and it being real. As I've sort of worked over the years to sort of try and grow my business, and as my corporate career went on, I find myself looking back now and thinking, if only I had had somebody like me to talk to in my 20s, if I'd understood, because this energy thing is not something new. I actually think it's an inherent human ability that we have lost. The majority of people have lost, because everybody can rediscover it. And it shifts how you see the world. And even just in simple interactions, when you walk into a room, when you go into a meeting, just understanding the impact that your energy and how your being can have on everybody. That would have, would have been nice to have known about that.
Yeah, love it, Tony. What's your favourite book?
Books, sets of books that I tend to go back to on a regular basis over the years, I've discovered. If you're looking for an idea or a quote or a concept, anything by Oscar Wilde, Alice in Wonderland, and The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Back to Douglas Adams. Yeah,
those are the three things that I just keep coming back to.
All right, well done, sir.
What? And if I couldn't read anything else, give me those three sets of books, and I'd be happy.
All right, what's your favourite quote?
Everything should be simplified as much as possible and no more.
That's really good. Einstein's got some wonderful ones like this, so really good. All right, finally, Tony, how do people find you? There's going to be a lot of people listening to this, and some of them, their mind has definitely been expanded for sure, and they'll want to know more. Tell me more about this. Tell me more about coaching. Tell me more about the simplicity of mastery. Tell me more about TonyLatimer.ai. How do they find you if they'd like to know more?
Best central place to go. First, look for Tony Latimer on LinkedIn. I Google fairly well, as they say. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. If you want to go look at what kinds of work I'm doing, the company brand is Profitable Leadership, so profitableleadership.com. As you asked before about the figure behind me, some years ago I met an amazing designer, and I was able to talk and she was able to turn it into things. So the symbol is based around the P and the L of profitable leadership, but with the intention of it just shows the coaching connection.
All right, brilliant. We'll put the links into the show notes as well, Tony. It helps people to find it. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us today and your wisdom and insights. It's really been heightening for me. I'll use that term, heightening mindset. You've heightened my awareness. You've heightened my thinking. You got me to stop, reflect, and think about different concepts in the coaching world. I really appreciate your time today. You've been listening to The Leadership Project. In the next episode, we'll be joined by Sarah Olivieri, the brilliant mind behind Pivot Ground. She will share her extensive expertise in non-profit management. Don't forget to subscribe to the Leadership Project YouTube channel, where we bring you video podcasts and short curated videos all about leadership each and every week. Thank you for listening to The Leadership Project at mixbeers.com. A huge call out to Faris Sadek for his video editing of all of our video content, and to all of the team at TLP. Joanne Goes On, Gerald Calabo, and my amazing wife, Say Spears. I could not do this show without you. Don't forget to subscribe to the Leadership Project YouTube channel, where we bring you interesting videos each and every week. And you can follow us on social, particularly on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Now, in the meantime, please do take care, look out for each other, and join us on this journey as we learn together and lead together.